Christmas Eve came down hard on Ash Hollow. Not gently the way snow sometimes does when it wants to be forgiven. This snow came sideways, sharp as thrown salt, stinging the eyes and swallowing sound. The kind of cold that doesn't just touch skin, but slips inside bones and starts asking questions your body is too tired to answer. I remember her walking through it. Eliza May Whitlow moved, like someone already half remembered by the world. Her boots were soaked through, leather stiff as old grief, each step a quiet argument between pride and survival. The hem of her dress dragged through snow that had already forgotten her name. She kept her chin lifted, not because she was strong, but because lowering it felt like agreeing with the night. Windows glowed as she passed them. Gold light, laughter, a fiddle somewhere, playing something cheerful and cruel. Shadows of families leaned close to hearth fires, hands wrapped around mugs, children drowsy with warmth. Every door was closed, every curtain drawn just enough to see her without being seen. By the time she reached the hitching post outside the mercantile, her fingers had stopped aching. That scared her more than the pain ever did. She leaned her forehead against the frozen wood, breath coming out thin and ragged. And for a moment, just a moment, she let herself imagine laying down in the snow and letting it cover her. Quiet, white, finished. But survival has a way of whispering even when hope goes silent. Earlier that evening, Mrs. Harlan at the boarding house had smiled the way women do when they're already saying no. Her lips were kind. Her eyes were not. "I'm full for the winter," she'd said, though Eliza could see 2 empty hooks on the wall behind her. Someone inside had laughed. Someone else had whispered her name like it tasted sour. The sheriff had watched from across the street, hands tucked into his coat, jaw working slowly. He hadn't said a word. Silence, she learned, could bruise just as badly as cruelty. So now there was only the cold, and the truth she hadn't wanted to face. Ash Hollow would let her freeze before it let her belong. She pushed away from the post and turned toward the edge of town, where the lamplight thinned and the snow lay deeper, untouched by foot or mercy. Caleb Rowe's ranch sat out there, half a mile beyond the last house, where the land stopped pretending it was civilized. People spoke his name carefully, like it might bite. A widower, a man who kept to himself, a man no one invited and no one missed. Her feet carried her there before her pride could argue. The walk felt longer than it was. Wind tore at her shawl. Snow gathered in her lashes, turning the world into a blur of gray and white. She practiced the words in her head, then threw them away, then picked them up again like something fragile she wasn't sure she deserved to hold. The ranch house emerged slowly from the storm, dark and solid, crouched against the land like it had learned endurance the hard way. Smoke rose from the chimney, thin but real. Warmth lived there. She could feel it, like a promise she was afraid to break just by wanting it. Her knuckles hovered at the door. She nearly turned back. When it opened, lamplight spilled out, soft and yellow, cutting the storm in half. Caleb Rowe stood there, taller than she'd imagined, shoulders squared from years of labor, face lined not with anger, but with wear. His eyes took her in quickly, then stopped, as if he realized she was more than a problem to be solved. She swayed. He reached out without thinking, steadying her elbow before she could fall. His hand was warm. That alone almost undid her. "You shouldn't be out in this," he said, voice low, roughened by disuse. "There wasn't anywhere else," she answered, and hated how honest it sounded. Inside, the house smelled of wood smoke and stew. The fire crackled, unbothered by the storm. He sat her down near it, poured her water, set a bowl in her hands. He didn't ask questions while she ate. That kindness cut deeper than interrogation ever could. When the bowl was empty, he cleared his throat. "You can warm up, then you'll need to go." The words were not cruel. They were careful, practiced. She nodded. She understood boundaries. She had lived inside them her whole life. Still, something inside her buckled. The cold had taken enough. It wasn't going to take her too. "If I go back out there," she said quietly, eyes fixed on the fire, "I won't make it through the night." He didn't answer right away. Her next words came out smaller, but steadier than she expected. "If I stay, I'll be your wife." Silence stretched. The fire popped. Wind howled against the walls like it was listening. Caleb looked at her, then really looked, not at what the town said she was, not at the bargain she'd offered. At the woman sitting in his mother's old chair, hands shaking, spine still straight. "That's not something to beg with," he said finally. "I'm not begging," she replied. "I'm choosing." He turned away, jaw tight, shame flickering across his face. Not at her, but at the fact that part of him had already wanted to say yes before she'd finished speaking. She stayed, not as a claim, not as a prize, as shelter, as respect. He slept in the chair by the fire that night, boots on, hat pulled low. She wrapped herself in a blanket that smelled faintly of lavender and dust, and for the first time in weeks, she slept without fear clawing at her ribs. Christmas morning arrived pale and quiet. Snow lay smooth as a hell breath. Eliza woke warm, listening to the low sounds of a man moving carefully in his own house, as if afraid of breaking something fragile. Caleb handed her a coat before they went into town, his late wife's. He hesitated, then placed it over her shoulders with a gentleness that felt like a promise he hadn't yet named. The town saw them before they reached the square. Heads turned. Whispers bloomed. Mrs. Harlan's mouth fell open just slightly. The sheriff lifted a brow. "This is my wife," Caleb said, voice even, as if he were stating the weather. Eliza stood taller than she ever had. She felt the weight of judgment slide off her like snow from a roof. Let them talk. Let them stare. She was warm. She was alive. She was chosen in choosing. Someone laughed. Someone scoffed. A man muttered something about desperation. Eliza stepped forward before Caleb could retreat into old habits. "I asked to stay," she said. "Not because I was weak, because I wanted to live." The square went quiet. Caleb moved then, not loudly, not dramatically, just close enough that his shoulder brushed hers. Enough. They returned to the ranch as dusk softened the world again. The fire welcomed them back. Eliza hung the coat carefully, honoring the past without being afraid of it. Years later, I still think about that night, about how love didn't arrive with flowers or vows, but with a door opened in a storm, about how dignity can be reclaimed one small kindness at a time. And if you're listening now, carrying your own cold into a night that feels too long, remember this. Sometimes survival is the bravest form of love. Sometimes staying is the first step toward becoming whole.